Hello everyone, how are we doing? Welcome back to the channel. Today I thought we'd look at 15 ideas I came up with for some new formable nations that Paradox could add to the game. We just came out of 1.9.1, which added in some new releasable nations, and the last DLC came out with two new formable nations. Those were Al-Andalus and Polynesia, if I remember correctly. So I thought, as we're moving into the next DLC cycle, I could get in early and maybe stick some suggestions into the stirring pot and see if any of them come out on the other side. So, I hope you enjoy. Let's look at some suggestions and I'll see you at the end. Okay, so you joined me on what is quite a confusing map, I understand, but trust me, it's all fine. So the key components I had when I was sort of designing what formable nations I think should be added was based on three factors really. Whether it's fun to play in that region or like underdeveloped so it needed more fun. So fun. Whether there was enough historical backing for it, because I didn't just want to create something out of thin air. I thought it was necessary that the suggestions were at least had some reasoning behind them. And the third one is how plausible they could be to the region they were in. I didn't want to make it so that, you could just form, I don't know, the Asia as a formable nation. It needed to have some sort of plausibility within its own region. So my first idea is La Plata. Formable with Argentina and Uruguay are sort of the key ones. I'm sure you could do it with Chile as well. And so, assuming that you own Bolivia, Paraguay, Argentina, Chile and Uruguay, you can click the button and now you're La Plata. I think you could now be a nice shade of white. There's some historical backing behind this, of course, with the United Provinces of Rio de la Plata, the Spanish colony. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that the sort of German-influenced Argentina would make a push and create something like this. So yeah, also South America is just fun to play in. It's untouched, it's got lots of potential. You get a whole bunch of manpower and things to do with this, conquer South America. Yeah, I think it's a good first pick. So as you can see, Brazil here, probably a little bit spooked by La Plata there on its borders. So why not a formable nation for all South American miners, the Union of South American Nations. And assuming you have this rather large list of countries here that essentially make up most of South America, excluding the Guyanas. The United States of South America. I mean, this was sort of one of the memeier titles I went for. The Union of South America, that's better. So as you can see, we've got the somewhat interesting flag here of the Union of South America, because this is a plausible concept. Brazil was sort of one of the key factors that were pushing it in the more recent 21st century. Of course, the politics is complicated in the region, and we won't get into that. But the key point is, there is a plausibility of you being able to form this nation, because it's just as plausible of happening today. So yeah, it gives South America really something to achieve. If you go for the full conquest of South America, you can get this big country. Although looking at it now, I'm not 100% sure about the colour, but the colour's not important. It's just the nation. But that's not to say I did forget about the Guyanas. So if anybody ever did get around to playing this little small region, you could get Suriname, Guyana and French Guiana, and if you can get them all together, you can form the Guyanas, which has its own little green colour and is situated quite nicely on the northern coast there. So this is a regional based formable nation, mostly because I felt like this region was so underdeveloped it just could use a third thing added to the mix. Rather interestingly, I did make it so they could have a core on this southern part of Venezuela, which was considered to be another part of Guyana when it was originally being classified. The borders are not the nicest in the world, but it would make sense that if this is the Guyanas, then this sort of coastline up here would be part of it. Again, let's skip over the politics and move on to the gameplay. And deep in the centre of the Caribbean here, we can see Haiti, which, given the opportunity, can form Hispaniola by situating itself to have control of the entire island of Hispaniola. Once you do so, you can unite it, and there you go, the United Island of Hispaniola. Very small, very subtle change for what could be probably a country that's never going to get any content. So why not give it some? Also, you can have quite an interesting flag, as you can see in the top left. I quite like this one. And if you manage to take it all out, you can form the Greater Antilles, which is of course Cuba, Hispaniola, Jamaica and Puerto Rico. So all the key sort of major islands of the Caribbean as one united Caribbean nation. Oh, and a nice red. As you can see, I added a little wholesome star to the flag there. We can now move to Europe, where I thought something was missing from the DLC. I'm not sure about anyone else. They added in the very cool new releasable nations here, Catalonia, Navarra, and, ignoring that word, Galicia. But unfortunately, there's not really an ability to unite the Iberian Peninsula beyond the focus trees. So why not add in the ability? If you have Spain, Portugal, and sort of all the core regions here, you can form Iberia. And this should work for both Spain and Portugal, as well as all of the minors that can be released in this region. And the Iberian Republic is born. Your capital, of course, remains here, but depending on where you started, it'll be there. And it gets the wonderful blue colour that monarchist Portugal has. I just thought it was fitting because it's such a nice colour. Speaking of which, you might not have known that you could release many parts of Germany into their pre-Confederation individual kingdoms. It's part of the new French focus tree. So, what if we added to this and made it so that you can reform the German Confederation? Of course, I'd have to stick in a pre-point and say you probably need to make it so that this can be created at the start of the game as like a fragmentation option. So if you hold all sort of German cores in base 1936, don't worry about Alsace-Lorraine, that's not required. You can reform Germany, taking all the old kingdoms, Schleswig-Holstein, Hanover, Mecklenburg, Prussia, Sachsen, Bavaria and Württemberg. And of course you can form the German Confederation with any of these nations. And the German Empire has returned. You could call this a reformable nation. I think that's what the brand needs to have with this. It's not just formable, it's sort of reformable. Of course, it doesn't just end there, because there's plenty of regions you could also apply this to. And so I thought, why not give the mention to Yugoslavia? It's actually easier to release all the parts of Yugoslavia into their own individual sort of regions. So for those people who do want to play in this region, specifically interesting with Croatia that is allowed to form Austria-Hungary, you could add in the nation to reform Yugoslavia should it become fragmented like it is here. And the Yugoslavian Confederation is born. Okay, so moving away from nations that already exist in the game, let's talk about some new ideas. So here's one for you, the Caucasus region. Now this might just seem like something I've sort of randomly invented, or it doesn't really make sense, it's just a region, but up until 1936, the Caucasus region was a united territory under the sort of Russian communist government. So playing as one of the freed minors, such as Azerbaijan, if you manage to hold all the territory, you can form the Caucasus region. Central Asia has long-standing been a region I know nothing about, and yet I'm very interested in. So why not get, and this was essentially based off of the air region of the Great Steppe, you can form Central Asia. Historically, in some context it was also referred to as Turan, which is a name I've gone for here, and I've also made it so that you don't need to own Kazakhstan to form it, because I just felt like Kazakhstan could get too powerful, and that would be anti-fun. So I wanted the region to be fun because it gives you lots of options. You've got Afghanistan, Iran, Russia to your north, if not Kazakhstan, lots of options to play with here. And there we have it, the Central Asian Confederation. I'm sure this wouldn't be an absolute powder keg if it could come to reality. As I say, maybe not the most historical one, but then again, Paradox did add Byzantium to the game, so, tit for tat. I'm not even going to waste your time with this one, I just wanted to create the Mongol horde. So if you do perchance get the opportunity to, Mongolia has the ability to form the Mongol hordes. I also gave this ability to Menguko, should you own this territory, because of course he has the spirit of Genghis. You don't need to own this land, because that would cause issues with the Japanese. But if you do manage to conquer all this territory, then Greater Mongolia is a nation you can form. Yeah, I might be losing the whole historical argument here, but they have context in history. Paradox made you form Rome. Just leave me alone, it's fine. Okay, here's one for you. You can't get mad at me for this one. French Indochina existed in the time period. So, if you manage to become one of the freed states and hold all of its territory, why not form a united Indochina? The Indo-Chinese Federation. There we go. Simple, straight to the point, lots of manpower, lots of potential to go after Siam and start your own thing. It didn't seem fair to me that, although I'm very grateful for New Zealand to have its own formable nation associated with it, it kind of left out Australia. So, why not make Australasia? If you own the region that is consisted of Australasia, you can unite the territories. So this includes Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, New Zealand and Australia. It is in fact the same colour as Australia. I wasn't very imaginative with this one, but you know, this one is less historical, more about being fun, and just it felt like something the game could use, something for Australia to sort of strive for as they go after New Zealand, or if Australia wants to form its own empire. They also do get cores on the islands surrounding it in Oceania, so there's stuff for you to expand to if you don't have it. So yeah, I think a nice little thing there. Australasia. It would of course be criminal of me not to add in my personal favourite, the one I hope most will be added to the game. You know, if the forces that be allow Paradox to see this video, I hope this is the one they take to heart, and that is the East African Federation. So this is if Uganda, Kenya and Tanzania, or, well, it's more than that, but let's say just Tanzania, came together, they can unite East Africa. So as we have our large Uganda here, we can unite East Africa, and the East African Federation is born. I also added in some more options, so if they get Rwanda and Burundi, they can unite this region for some cause, and also integrate South Sudan. This region meant a lot because this is a quote-unquote formable nation that is actually proposed in the time it was released. Originally, the region was considered to be united into one territory, but it fell through, and it's also still being considered today, a sort of connection of these areas, including South Sudan. So it is arguably the most historical region. It has lots of fun potential because you've got a coast, you've got tons of borders, sort of people to invade, you've got so many things you can do. It just is the most fun. And I may have stuck a little bit of an Easter egg in that if you're non-aligned, you're called Victoria. Do you stay awake at night and think to yourself, what country must I play? What is the #1 most played country? Because I know what you're thinking. It's the Gambia, the small river here. You want to play as this river? Well, I've got you covered. You can form the Senegambia. Playing as Senegal or Gambia, if you manage to get control of the other half, as seen here, you can form the Senegambia. That's it. That's all it is. It's just that. Nothing else really. Okay, and to wrap it up, I believe this is number 15. I think it should be number 15. We have the Caribbean as united. We've got the Golden Coast. This is sort of a way to make West Africa very interesting, mostly because Nigeria has 20 million manpower and just not enough states to do anything with it. So I found that what the region was called, it's been called many things over the time, but Gold Coast was sort of a unifying thing. It can also be called the West Coast of Africa though, and due to the ravages of colonialism unfortunately, it can be seen as a united area, so let's have a look at it. Okay, and if the forces that be allow you to somehow manage to get all of this territory, as difficult as it might be, you should be able to form the Gold Coast. Lots of manpower, lots of states, lots of potential. And there it is, those are my 15 nations I've added, all through the list from left to right. Hopefully some of these will be added, but if they're not, you might have noticed this hasn't been a hypothetical. These are things I've added to the game in the form of a mod, which would be Hovalax's Formable Nations mod. So hopefully, if you check in the description, you can download it if you want to play with these ideas yourself, in the off chance they're not added to the game, which, let's face it, they might not be, but we can hope, and you can play them for yourself. Also, as a side note, a lot of these countries don't have focus trees, so you might also want to get another one of my mods called Hovalax's Generic Focus Tree, which is essentially a better generic focus tree, and it makes playing through all of these countries far more entertaining. I mean, you can look at the industry tree and the political tree, they're much bigger now, so hopefully a lot more fun to play with. That should also be in the description if you want to play with it. But if not, that's everything. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, feel free to like and subscribe and all that other cool stuff that people usually ask people to do. Okay, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you again for watching. Alright, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.